Flamboyant British entrepreneur Sir Richard Branson is mostly recognised for his Virgin Airlines, megastores and media outlets. But there is so much more to Richard than meets the eye.
What he does is incredible. It's always great when you get to meet people who have lived fortunate lives, who turn that around and actually look outside from themselves, and he causes change.
Virgin Unite is Richard Branson's charitable arm of his company. The whole night is in honor of Richard's mother, Eve, who has really been a force behind Richard his whole life.
I would never allowed him to think about himself. I would, and when he was a little boy, if he looked shy, I said, "Are you shy? You're thinking of yourself. Don't dare think of yourself." So he was always made to think of outside people.
Branson's public demeanour is far from shy. He lives a rock star lifestyle and has a lot of fun along the way.
Richard's great. You meet a lot of people that are very successful businessmen, and they act and behave like successful businessmen, and he really acts a lot more like an artist. He's a very creative thinker. He reminds me of a hippie, actually.
In his early years, he was a hippie, but now, a major player on the world stage, he can truly make a difference.
What Virgin Atlantic is planning to do is to start scheduled services to Iraq and get Iraq back on its feet again.
Richard's influence is felt all around the world, and he uses his profile to raise awareness of HIV/AIDS.
We've all got to do everything we can as citizens to try to prevent people getting it, i.e. to try to warn young people of the need to wear condoms in order that they don't pick up the disease.
He was awarded a knighthood in 1999 for his contribution to entrepreneurship.
There's a big responsibility goes with that, but I'm just going to have to live up to it, because generally icons at some stage mess up and let people down, so I'm going to continue to enjoy life and hope not to put my foot in it too often.
First and foremost, he is a loving father to his children Holly and Sam, and devoted husband to wife Joan. An adventurer at heart, he's made several world record-breaking attempts and always promotes an environmental message.
It is designed to capture data and damage to the ozone layer without adding to it.
Sir Richard Branson is an incredibly unique modern-day industrialist who's fueled by raw instinct. Virgin is one of the world's most recognised and diverse brands. With more than 300 companies worldwide, it employs approximately 50,000 people in 30 countries. The product range is as wide and wild as Richard's imagination. Ranging from planes to trains, cola, radio.
Virgin 1215 is now officially on the air!
To health, Formula One, media, mobile telephones, financial services and music, to name just a few. If you're a consumer, Virgin is competing for your business everywhere you turn. But what may have flown under your radar is Branson's tireless drive to improve the environment, society, and give generously to humanitarian causes. In the past, Branson was skeptical about global warming, but after a breakfast meeting with former American Vice President Al Gore, that all changed. Branson, so concerned about the reality of global warming, has committed to investing 100% of the profits from Virgin's transportation companies over the next 10 years. This investment is expected to reach $3 billion. Branson appealed to the aviation industry to work together to tackle the serious problem of climate change.
I think now there is the sense of urgency out there to do something about it, and the feedback we've got from the letters that we sent out to the industry make me believe that we can get the industry to get its act together. Having said that, if the industry doesn't get its act together, if there are ideas that can save considerable amounts of CO2, then government should impose some of these things onto the industry.
The aviation industry contributes around 3% of the world's CO2 emissions. Surprisingly, the airline boss suggests that people should consider other forms of transportation rather than using planes.
When there are trains as alternatives, there is a question mark about, I think, the future of domestic flights and whether more domestic flights should take place in the future. And that's something for governments to decide, because if there is an adequate train service, people shouldn't have to jump on a plane. And there are a lot of places in the world where people are taking planes on relatively short journeys.
The main thrust of his $3 billion investment is focused on research and the development of biofuels to power airliners.
This is the fuel, and this is today's, in a sense, an experiment. I mean, this fuel is basically made up of babassu oil, which comes from the rainforest. And one of the positive things about that is that if airlines start using the nuts out of the rainforest, people are not going to want to cut down the rainforest, because there's going to be good money to be made out of the rainforest. And then it's also got a mixture of coconut oil. Oh, what a pair of coconuts! And there are massive coconut plantations all over the world that have just got their coconuts lying on the sand and rotting. And the kinds of places that you plant coconuts, you can't really plant anything else. So it's a good, sustainable mixture of fuel. We should be able to make enough of this kind of fuel to power most of the Virgin Atlantic fleet, and maybe a certain number of other airlines that we're involved in around the world. I doubt there'll be enough quantity of fuel to power every single airline in the world. So we then need to develop something, I suspect, a fuel based on algae. And I think an algae-based fuel should be able to power all planes in the world. What we're doing today is to prove that a clean fuel, or a percentage of a clean fuel, can actually fly at 35,000 feet safely, and it can work. In the past, people have said that ethanol freezes at 15,000 feet, and therefore you're never going to be able to get a biofuel to be used on a 747. But we've overcome that problem. So the next step will be then to get the Civil Aviation Authority's permission to continue to use this fuel, and we'll obviously be applying for that. And then we've got to get out there and get people into the rainforest, picking nuts and get them into the coconut plantation picking nuts and start creating the fuel. So we are talking realistically, I suspect, a couple of years away.
The pioneering demonstration flight flew between London and Amsterdam, with one engine being powered with 80% jet fuel and 20% biofuel.
The reason only one's being powered by the biofuel is that this plane costs $160 million. It's flying over a lot of houses with people in it. And it's an experiment. I mean, it's we have obviously tested it on the ground as best you can with Boeing and GE, but it's never flown at 30,000 feet before, and therefore we want to have our plane back.
Branson's investment into biofuels is not huge when compared to the wealth of the oil and coal companies he is competing against. His big picture vision for the future is one of a sustainable world for future generations.
You have two choices. One, you just sit back and carry on using the dirty fuel and do nothing about it, or you do what Virgin Atlantic is doing. We put 100% of all the profits we make from our airlines into trying to develop clean new fuels for planes, for cars, for buses, and that's the choice. That's the choice we're making. So. I believe that we can bring about a breakthrough. I don't know how long it's going to take, but today is a very, very important first step. But it is only a step, and so we are I think, still talking about being some years away before all planes in the sky are flying without emitting dirty carbon.
While the jury is still out on biofuels in the scientific community, Richard is yet again putting his money where his mouth is, being an industry leader that follows his instinct. If it works on planes, why not trains? It was a Virgin train that was the first to run on biodiesel in the UK. It's biodegradable and produces less CO2 than conventional diesel.
It's a big step towards trains becoming completely green. We've got 20% biodiesel on this train. We think we can get up to 100%, which basically will mean that it'll be the equivalent of taking 100,000 cars off the road. You know, we want to try to make train journeys completely carbon neutral. They're already 76% more efficient than cars and planes, but this would make a massive extra difference.
Branson was joined at London's Euston Station by then Prime Minister-in-waiting Gordon Brown. The government wanted to see a reduction in transport's carbon dioxide emissions, and Richard was leading the way.
Obviously, Gordon Brown's pleased because you know, he, as are the other leaders, committed to trying to deal with the problems of global warming, trying to you know, have a greener planet, a planet that our children and grandchildren can grow up in the same way that we have done. He said, you move very quickly on it, and I think we have moved pretty quickly on it.
Back in 1987, he launched Mates Condoms to raise awareness of safe sex for young people.
They are going to have relationships, which I think you know, we almost assume that they will, and we recommend that they protect themselves.
The distribution of condoms was widened from just pharmacies to retailers such as supermarkets and clothes stores. Affordability was improved by halving the price of existing brands. Richard later sold the rights of Mates Condoms for £1 million, donating the sale amount to charity. Branson is a seasoned campaigner when it comes to publicity stunts to get his message across.
All right, you're going to have to help me.
Together with Paula Abdul, they invented a multi-faith celebration to promote AIDS awareness.
Chris Mahana Kwanzaa.
Thank you very much.
We made it up. I can't even pronounce it, having made it up, but it's a mixture of Christianity, Jewish and Muslim religions, and a few others thrown in as well.
This ornament right here costs $1, that's it. And it benefits the Youth AIDS Organization and helps spread the word and educate and prevent HIV with young people.
The dynamic duo kicked off the fundraising with their donation of $10,000 to Youth AIDS.
All of us need to do everything we can to try to reverse the problem, and on a global basis, reverse what's become a horrible trend.
Happy Chris Mahana Kwanzaa. Cheers.
In a more formal setting, Branson teamed up with Peter Gabriel to initiate the Global Elders Organisation. This group of elder statesmen and women include Archbishop Tutu, Jimmy Carter and Nelson Mandela.
AIDS affects people of all ages, but in particular, it affects young people.
The Elders' goal is to solve global problems including climate change, poverty and HIV/AIDS.
We've all got to do everything we can as citizens to try to prevent people getting it, or try to campaign to raise more money for research to try to stamp this disease out.
Richard joined Mandela at Robben Island, the prison where the former South African president was held during apartheid. They were there to promote the historic 4664 concert that was staged in Cape Town. Virgin helped ensure the success of the event that raised critical funds for South Africa's AIDS crisis by providing free flights for many international artists.
A gathering of very special people, but special also because their faith and fortune have not removed them from caring and compassion.
Another positive footprint was left in South Africa when he launched the Richard Branson School of Entrepreneurship. This virtually free university offers disadvantaged individuals an education at a fraction of the cost of other universities.
You know, Africa's a wonderful place, and it's been through so much misery, and Taddy said something wonderful earlier. I mean, he mentioned all these handouts from America, and but he actually ended by saying, you know, empires do not last forever, and maybe in 50 or 60 or 70 years' time, America will be coming hat in hand to South Africa.
At the heart of Richard's humanitarian work is Virgin Unite. His foundation focuses on solving social and environmental problems ranging from combating the spread of disease in Africa to economic empowerment and education initiatives. Branson regularly hosts gala charity auctions to raise funds for the numerous charities that Virgin Unite supports.
Who did 60? You did 60. All right, you got 50, and who's the other person, is it?
Well, I was on a Virgin plane a few years ago, and I was walking down the aisle, and this lovely lady grabbed me and sat me down on the seat next to her and told me all about fistula. And tonight we're trying to raise money to teach doctors how to do the operation, and also raise money to do the operations themselves.
Richard's network in the entertainment industry brings star power to the foundation. Virgin Unite ambassadors like singer Natalie Imbruglia raise the profile of the causes he supports.
These evenings are great because they raise money for a very worthy cause. I've had lots of trips out to Nigeria and we're doing great work out there and we're seeing a lot of progress. So events like tonight just go towards the programs that we're actually working on.
Hey, I'll support Richard anytime for all the work that he's doing, and Natalie I know and came to support her, and you know, just this event I think it's really important. There's a lot of homeless youth in America at the moment, and at a time when a lot of us are thinking about our own money or loss of money and our own troubles, I think it's important to remember there are other people out there who are having more difficulty than we are. So.
Tonight is called Rock the Kasbah, and it's to raise money for these indigenous people that live in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco. The whole night is in honor of Richard's mother, Eve.
The Eve Branson Foundation aims to improve the lives of women and young girls in Morocco through education, business and healthcare.
She went looking up in the mountains and fell in love with this beautiful Kasbah called the Kasbah Tamadot. And she came down one day and said, look, if I'm going to wait for you anymore to go up in your bloody balloon, you're going to have to buy the Kasbah, and I'll look after all the people in the local area. So anyway, that's what happened.
The Rock the Kasbah event has proved to be wonderfully popular and has raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for Eve's charity. Stars still come out to play, even when Branson is not in attendance.
I knew that he was going to do this. He told me about this a while back. He is somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, setting a new world record with his son and his daughter, Holly and Sam.
I thought he was going to be here, but he lost his paddle.
Although he was seabound in a bid to beat a transatlantic sailing record, Richard did take the time to call.
How is everything on the boat? Are you guys going to break this record?
Well, we're doing our best. It's all been going extremely well, but we just have got into weather that is perhaps a little bit too strong for the boat. We're not sure whether we're going to manage it this time, but we're giving it our best shot, and we'll see how we go.
Richard, all of us in this room right now is raising our glasses to you. You're going to make it!
Unfortunately, Richard, Sam, Holly and crew were forced to scrap their transatlantic record attempt after the yacht was severely damaged by a storm just 2 days into their trek. Helicopters have rescued Richard on numerous occasions from his ill-fated record attempts. These experiences motivated him to sponsor a much-needed air ambulance that would come to the aid of others.
Been rescued for 4 occasions by helicopters and various mad escapades out of the sea, and I felt I needed to give something back and say thank you. And London, believe it or not, did not have a fully funded air ambulance service.
Since the air ambulance first began, trauma deaths in London and on the M25 motorway have fallen by more than 50%. Virgin contributes £175,000 annually to the service. Branson flexes his industrial muscle to mount political pressure on world leaders for the betterment of Africa. In the lead up to the 2005 G8 meeting, he chartered a Virgin Atlantic flight to Edinburgh for about 150 international activists.
We thought it was important to bring people from America, from Africa, from London to Scotland, This plane is full of people from the One campaign in America, from Make Poverty History in London, from masses of different organisations. Today it's basically been to bring all the charity workers who will make an enormous difference in Africa if the G8 can write out a cheque for something like $50 billion.
Richard is a man that makes a positive difference to our world thanks to the success of his global group of companies. But the Virgin Empire was not built overnight. A dyslexic, Branson dropped out of school aged 16. His headmaster predicted that Richard would either go to prison or become a millionaire. In fact, he achieved both of these feats. After setting up a student magazine, he founded Virgin as a mail-order music retailer. The success of this business enabled him to open Virgin record stores in the UK. But Branson was arrested for tax evasion and charged for selling records that had been declared export stock. Richard spent a night in jail and was fined £60,000. His mother put up her home as security against the debt. Branson bounced back from the lowest point of his life and launched his Virgin record label and built a recording studio. He signed an unwanted Mike Oldfield to Virgin, and his album Tubular Bells was a hit, selling 5 million copies. The biggest music acts in the world now flocked to the label. Branson had achieved his dream of a vertically integrated music company. Virgin stores could now promote the bands that Virgin Music had signed. Richard had truly arrived on the world stage as a major player. Today, his Virgin megastores can be found all around the world. His colourful personality draws huge media and public interest when opening new stores.
And we're getting a picture on the TV.
Most people would say anybody who's opening a music store in this day and age needs to be seen by a shrink because most music stores are going bankrupt and closing down.
Where others see a market in decay, Branson widens his vision and finds new opportunities.
Virgin's has got a strong brand and I think we're quite good at reinventing ourselves.
Richard moves with the times and often leads the world in new technologies.
Well, hello, good morning, and thanks very much for coming.
He launched Virgin Digital, a music download service, by being downloaded into the Oxford Street branch of a Virgin megastore. He appeared in a holographic form in London, despite being thousands of miles away in the Caribbean.
The way to compete with downloading is either set up a downloading company yourself, which we have with Virgin Digital, or create an environment in a store which is actually worth going to. I mean, people do still like to get out of their flats and their houses and go and have an experience. And I think coming into a Virgin megastore is an experience. And I think we'll surprise people with the kind of taste that we've got, not just in music, but in other products as well. We still like to think we've got the best music selection of any store. But we've decided to have some of the hippest fashion, the best books, the best players, the best films, etc., etc. So we've now broadened the range, and I think it's going to work well.
Richard's love of music and having a good time is also lived out through the V Festival, an annual music event that is staged in the United Kingdom. His son Sam promotes the event and dreams of taking it abroad.
I think if there's enough support from here, there's no reason why in the future we can't expand and have thousands more people around, even America, enjoying the concerts and festival. And then if in time, maybe even China, India, South Africa, Australia.
Branson uses his music industry contacts for the greater good. He was instrumental in Elton John's recording of Candle in the Wind for Princess Diana's funeral, which raised £40 million for charity.
And over the last week, we've been quietly talking to the musicians that are close to her, and everybody's felt the same. There hasn't been one musician we've talked to who hasn't felt strongly enough to write a song or want to participate. For instance, Paul McCartney just phoned up 5 minutes ago to volunteer a beautiful song that he's just written, which he feels would be absolutely appropriate.
While music launched Richard onto the world stage as an entrepreneur, his bold move into the aviation industry demonstrated his courage and belief in his raw instinct.
I think the heart in business must come first. You must have a passion for something. I mean, for instance, when I decided to start an airline 19 years ago, Virgin Atlantic, the heart said that there must be a better way of running an airline than all the airlines I flew on. The service was abysmal, and I thought I could create something really special. The head and the accountants were telling me I was off my head, and that I should see somebody to examine my head, because somebody once said to me, the easiest way of becoming a millionaire is to start off as a billionaire and go into the airline business.
Virgin Atlantic is the quintessential Virgin story, which rose to David and Goliath proportions. In 1984, Richard set up the headquarters of Virgin Atlantic in a houseboat in London's Little Venice. Armed with a single plane bound to challenge the likes of British Airways, even this brash entrepreneur was nervous on the morning of the maiden flight of his airline.
I hope and feel that we've got our figures right. I may be horribly wrong, and I might have made a dreadful mistake, but unless we try, we definitely won't have succeeded, so we might as well have a try.
Virgin Atlantic almost didn't get off the ground. On the inaugural flight, a flock of birds flew into an uninsured engine. The cost of £600,000 came close to bankrupting the company. Branson had another problem that day.
No, you can't have my passport. I've forgotten it. Right, we'll have to do something about that.
Between 1984 and 1990, Virgin Atlantic operated on a small scale with only a handful of planes. The airline's aim was to provide the highest quality of innovative service at excellent value for money for all classes of travellers. In time, the concept was a hit. The Virgin fleet expanded and began flying out of Heathrow. In 1993, it made history by winning Airline of the Year for the third consecutive time.
But the 1993 Airline of the Year is Virgin Atlantic.
Anyway, I'd just like to say thanks very much to all the Virgin staff for making this possible. And they sound like cheerleaders tonight, so excuse us, we're a bit noisy bunch as well, but anyway, thank you.
This victory was made even sweeter given the circumstances. Arch-enemy British Airways had been running a dirty tricks campaign against Virgin that involved BA poaching Virgin's passengers and tampering with its computer files. The controversy would be fought out in the High Court.
Richard, this way. How easy do you think it'll be to resolve the differences between the two airlines?
If we knew, we'd tell you.
Well, you should know, though, shouldn't you?
I think...
Richard.
No, well, I mean, obviously, we're going to do our best over the next few days to try to sort all this out once and for all, and we are in talks, which is it's very important, I think.
Well, goodbye.
But the talks didn't progress as Richard might have liked.
By tomorrow, they've got 24 hours to come up with an offer.
Yes, if we haven't heard from them something sensibly within the next 24 hours, then there's no point in carrying on talking, in our opinion.
BA offered Virgin a compensation deal of £9 million, but in return, they demanded a gagging order.
Great deal warmer than it is out here, anyway. Richard, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
In touch. Bye.
If I may give you an example, I mean, they are saying that should they access our computer information again in the future, that they can comment on it, that the rest of the world could comment on it, but Virgin couldn't comment on it. And in the end, we just decided that that to be gagged is not worth a settlement.
In one of the most bitter legal battles in aviation history, British Airways finally admitted defeat. Counsel for BA apologised unreservedly for the alleged Dirty Tricks campaign against Virgin Atlantic and also agreed to pay damages of £500,000 to Branson and £110,000 to his airline, and the incurred legal costs of £3 million.
Obviously delighted with today's result and hope that it will bring in a new era of fair competition in British aviation history in the future.
Richard's next move was to form an alliance with American airline Delta. The deal would make Virgin more competitive with British Airways by gaining access to 200 cities in the United States.
It means that we can look after the quality aspects for our passengers. At the same time, it gives us a big brother in America who can benefit our passengers quite considerably.
Branson formed another alliance in 1999, but this one came at a price. He sold a 49% stake of Virgin Atlantic to Singapore Airlines.
But Virgin Atlantic will, until my dying days, always be my baby. I mean, it's something which we started 15 years ago. We've built up. It's been through many battles, and we would never give up on it.
The deal was worth £600 million for Branson. He pledged to reinvest the cash injection into Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Mobile Phones, and Virgin's internet services. The fuel price jump brought on by the first Gulf War was a major problem for Virgin. Following the 9/11 terrorist attacks in Washington and New York, the worldwide airline industry went into freefall. Branson petitioned the British Transport Secretary to gain government support.
On the state of the British airline industry, the government have said that they do not want to see the British aviation industry in any way damaged against the foreign carriers, American industry or European industry, and they will do everything they can to help.
As Branson's airlines soaked up more and more cash, its bankers were losing patience. He sold Virgin Music to EMI for $1 billion and kept Virgin Atlantic flying. It was a harrowing decision to sell the label that he'd invested over 20 years of his life developing. But the funds gave Branson the freedom to chart his own course without bankers yapping at his heels.
Bye.
The following year, Richard made another optimistic, bold decision. He invested in 10 of the world's longest airliners. The giant 340-600 Airbus carries nearly 500 passengers and is also quieter than other big jets.
Virgin Atlantic's taking on the biggest plane in the world, or the longest plane in the world, and buying 10 of them, I think it is a good indication of the fact that we feel that there is a recovery on the way. We're finding that economy class passengers are now up and flying again, but they are sensitive to, they want 4 engines, they want young planes, they want to know that safety is paramount in an airline's agenda.
During the Gulf War, Virgin flew several humanitarian flights into Iraq. Branson personally delivered and donated aid on the first civilian plane to land in Basra after the war began. Iraqi doctors and health workers that fled Iraq were desperate to return home and help with the relief effort.
What Virgin Atlantic is planning to do is to compile a list through virgin.com of all the doctors and nurses and sanitation experts, etc., who'd be willing to give up some of their time to go to Iraq and help get Iraq back on its feet again.
This entrepreneur come adventurer has been chasing and breaking records for decades. He thrives on the challenge and the rush of adrenaline that comes with each endeavour. In 1985, Branson made a record-breaking attempt to cross the Atlantic by boat in his Virgin Atlantic Challenger, but it capsized. An RAF helicopter rescued Richard and his crew. When at first you don't succeed, try again. He set off the following year for another transatlantic attempt, aboard the Virgin Atlantic Challenger Mark II. Under the close watch of crew and family at the Oxford Street control room, tensions grew when communications were lost.
Would you like to talk to him on the boat?
Yes.
What would you say?
Great. What are you doing on the boat?
Daddy was doing just fine on the boat. With lessons learned and kind winds this time, Branson conquered the Atlantic and beat the record by 2 hours.
We ought to be feeling very tired, but we're just feeling absolutely wonderful, I think. Well, it's very difficult to describe.
The Blue Ribbon record for the fastest passage across the Atlantic was smashed by 18 hours in 1989 by US millionaire Tom Gentry.
Congratulations, you made it!
Thank you. You sound more peppy than I am, I'll tell you.
Richard was there to congratulate his rival in true Branson style.
I'll take my hat off to them because having got into really bad weather last year and they really romped home. Beaten fair and square, I'm afraid.
After hosing down Tom with bubbly, both skippers ended up in the drink. Now Branson had more lofty ambitions for crossing the Atlantic. He would take to the sky in a hot air balloon.
I couldn't put a percentage chance in it. But I think if the weather's kind to us, we have a very good shot.
Richard succeeded in his crossing of the Atlantic despite crash landing just off Ratlin's coast in Ireland. Islanders rescued him and pilot Per Lindstrom from the sea.
Initially we went out to see what assistance we could render to Mr. Branson and his partner there. We realised then that they had been picked up safely from the water.
Branson later returned and donated £25,000 to the Rathlin Island Trust.
Well, it looks remarkably similar to the last one.
Branson and Per Lindstrom teamed up again in 1991. They attempted to become the first to cross the Pacific in a hot air balloon. The ambitious route was plotted to take off in Japan and land in North America.
We learnt a lot from the transatlantic. Anyway, I hope we learnt a lot. And I think that although we were given the record for the transatlantic crossing, I think we feel that the job wasn't quite finished somehow. I mean, the ending was slightly unfortunate. Pacific has never been attempted before in a hot air balloon. We believe it to be possible that a hot air balloon can cross the Pacific.
Richard may be a great adventurer, but he is an even better marketer of his brand. With the Virgin logo hugely prevalent on his record attempts, he gains more free global publicity than Virgin could buy. Just prior to crashing in Ireland, he radioed his ground crew asking what the media coverage was like.
Every venture I go into has a mixture of a business side and a pleasurable side. The wonderful thing about this particular adventure is that it will be a great personal challenge. It will help our businesses. Our airline flies to Japan, our airline will be flying to Los Angeles, and at the same time we can use it to get a message across about the environment. And we're carrying a large sign on the balloon to do with saving the planet. We are facing now, a potential world catastrophe with the cutting down of the forests, and I think we can play a very small bit in trying to, increase public awareness in that particular issue. There is a possibility that if the damage continues in the ozone layer, that a trans-Pacific crossing will not be possible 10 years from now or 20 years from now. So we will be able to do a certain amount of tests which we can send back to the Science Museum and send back to the Japanese for them to examine and see just how bad things are deteriorating at that sort of level.
But why would a man with so much to live for repeatedly put his life in acute danger?
I enjoy life enormously and have no wish to depart from it. You know that there are dangers all the time. And you're going to be ready for those dangers. And I actually think it's more likely that, that I will survive my life having, doing adventures like crossing the Pacific than I will necessarily doing a lot of driving down something like the motorway.
Well, what's been done about parachutes? Yes, parachutes are ordered the 2GQ Type 850.
Richard and Per Lindstrom successfully became the first to cross the Pacific in a hot air balloon. They travelled 6,700 miles in 47 hours, breaking the world distance record and hitting speeds of 245 miles per hour.
One of the most magnificent adventures I think anybody could have in their lifetime.
So look forward to seeing you in about 3 weeks' time.
The pair then made several unsuccessful attempts to be the first to circumnavigate the globe in a balloon. Undeterred, Branson switched his global circumnavigation ambitions to a solo non-stop plane flight and enlisted millionaire adventurer Steve Fawcett to pilot the mission.
I'm absolutely delighted to announce that Virgin Atlantic has launched the, hopefully, first solo-piloted aircraft, the Virgin Atlantic Global Flyer, to fly non-stop around the world, a record nobody has actually ever attempted before. Like Concorde, the Virgin Atlantic Flyer would be a sleek and slim aircraft, but unlike Concorde, it will also be super fuel efficient. And in the future, it is designed to capture data and damage to the ozone layer without adding to it. This plane will fly around the world, if it's successful, only using 9 tons of fuel. Our other planes would use about 1,500 tons of fuel. So it shows that the enormous leap forward in technology.
As reserve pilot, Richard would be land-based for this historic flight, but had great faith in Fawcett's experience of being the first to fly solo around the globe in a balloon.
Yes, it's not only a solo flight, but it's in an unpressurized capsule, so this is doing it without pressurization.
And respect of Steve's numerous aviation and sailing records.
I think my past experience is essential because I have to fly solo. I have to have the experience of doing all the functions, the navigation, the flying, and the endurance of doing something on my own for over 3 days.
Despite a serious fuel system problem over Hawaii, favourable tailwinds helped Steve to complete the non-stop round-the-world flight in just over 67 hours. There to greet him at Kansas Airport where the mission started and concluded was a jubilant Branson.
Never out of reach, but you ought to be. Thought I'd seen it all. Like I wasn't looking.
We're celebrating the 20th anniversary of Virgin Atlantic that started 20 years ago today with one plane. And we're celebrating it in a rather sort of fun, bizarre way. We're trying to beat the record for the fastest crossing of the Channel, by a car and a boat, all rolled into one, and this is it.
The amphibious car seats 3 people and can travel at more than 100 miles per hour on land and 30 miles per hour at sea. In true James Bond style, Branson slashed 4.5 hours off the previous amphibious record for crossing of the English Channel. The phrase "the sky's the limit" rings true for most of us, but Richard's imagination extends far beyond the clouds. He ambitiously formed Virgin Galactic, the world's first space line, a space tourism company that aims to take paying passengers into space.
Well, as a young man, I watched people landing on the moon, and I dreamt one day of going into space, but it was just, too expensive. And I met an incredible engineer called Bert Rutan. He had come up with the idea of Spaceship One, and Spaceship One did 3 test flights, proved the technology could work. So Spaceship One is actually above us. This is about 3 times as big as Spaceship One, and it's really pushing the boundaries literally into space.
Twin fuselage planes named White Knight lift the passenger spacecraft to about 50,000 feet, then detach from the plane and blast into space.
The beauty of White Knight 2 and Spaceship 2 is that they can help change our relationship with space, achieving an era where accessibility becomes a commercial and scientific norm rather than an exception. With the end of the oil era approaching and climate change progressing faster than most models have been predicting, the utilization of space is essential not only for communications, but also for the logistics of survival through things such as weather satellites,
agricultural monitoring, GPS, and climate science.
Branson signed a deal to sell 32% of Virgin Galactic to a Middle Eastern investment fund, giving the venture an influx of $280 million.
I never actually think about the investments I do. I think about creating things that I can be proud of, and I think generally if you can create something you can be proud of, it's likely to be successful. And you know, I think there are so many, millions and millions of people who'd love the chance to going into space, and it needed private enterprise to make that possible.
Perhaps not everyone has $200,000 to buy a ticket.
Fasten your seatbelts and prepare for liftoff.
But Doug Ramsberg's dream came true when Branson gave him a ticket for winning a competition.
Doug Ramsberg of North Glen, Colorado.
Congratulations.
You know, you look up at the stars and think one day, and here the day has come that, a common person can fly into space.
My ultimate dream is that in time we'll be able to bring the prices down and down and down, so that literally, millions of people will have the chance to experience space.
Branson loves competition and is a passionate sports fan. He has invested millions into Virgin's participation in Formula One. Richard is handy with a tennis racket and always comes out to play when Wimbledon rolls around.
About 5 years ago, we were thinking, what's Wimbledon missing? And it's missing a great party. There is no party for the tennis stars, for the women's stars, for the men's stars, and so we thought, let's do it. And screw it, let's do it.
The world's best tennis players, including Venus and Serena Williams, joined Branson at London's Kensington Roof Gardens and danced the night away. Virgin Atlantic has been chosen as the official airline of the European Ryder Cup team. Branson is always proud to display the Ryder Cup trophy in the Virgin Atlantic clubhouse at Heathrow. Richard was a key player in London's bid to win the biggest game of all, the 2012 Olympic Games.
Australia is the best example of where they bid for the Olympics, and it did an enormous amount for the country. And if getting the Olympics does an enormous amount for a country and an enormous amount for a city, Sydney, then obviously it helps business enormously as well.
From his home in Oxfordshire, he played host to more than 100 of the UK's business leaders that brainstormed the economic prospects of hosting the Games. Branson's vibrant public persona has been pivotal in building the iconic global Virgin brand into what it is today. As one of the world's most famous and entertaining entrepreneurs, it's not surprising that movie studios and Hollywood have come calling. He appeared in the James Bond film Casino Royale, a Superman feature, and cameos in Baywatch and Friends. Branson was the star of the reality TV series The Rebel Billionaire. In the show, he takes 16 would-be entrepreneurs around the world and tosses them into challenging situations.
I'm looking for somebody who would be capable of running a group of companies like Virgin. Someone who can pull out the best in people.
Fusing his fame with business opportunities was the main motivation for making the series.
They pay well, but I'm not actually doing it for the money. I've given the money to a charitable foundation I feel strongly about, but it's it is a good way, I suppose, of helping get myself and the Virgin brand better known in America.
The Rebel Billionaire series was screened on the Fox network in the States, attracting an audience of over 5.5 million viewers. It also aired in 19 countries around the world where Branson does business. Richard is one of a kind and is a role model that inspires the next generation of entrepreneurs. Daniel Riley started Nexus Airways at the age of 18. Like Branson, he took on the major players with only one plane.
if somebody offered me and said, you will be the next Richard Branson, I'd say marvellous, but...
At the age of 21, Alex Chu launched the $1 Million homepage. He sold 1 million pixels for $1 each. And you guessed it, he became a millionaire.
Richard Branson is probably one of my biggest idols. You know, a British entrepreneur who's, you know, gone worldwide and been very successful.
He has also won the respect of his peers. In 2007, he was ranked in the top 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's a great honour, a big responsibility. You have to go and make sure the influence is a positive influence. But we'll see how we go.
The United Nations believes his contribution has been a positive one. They honoured him with a Citizen of the World Award for his support of environmental and humanitarian causes. Sir Richard Charles Nicholas Branson refuses to follow convention, pursues and achieves his dreams, and seems to have more fun than most, while truly living a remarkable life.